Hello everyone, I am Bradley Sward, Associate Professor of Computer Information Systems at the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen, Illinois. And this video is part 15 in a continuing series of creating a game called Boxxle/Sokoban, porting it into the GameMaker Studio 2 engine, which has been done 12 parts ago now. And we are now well into and we're almost there, completing the C++ SFML engine with this game running on top of it. So just as another recap, what are we trying to do? Guy walks around, pushes blocks, pushes them to the goals. The game runs in 720p resolution with 60 by 60 tiles for everything that's happening. So now what is the goal of this video? The goal of this video is to create a font class, because the previous video has buttons with no font and no graphics on it. And so rather than have to make you bake in every image that you ever want to put, and wouldn't it make sense to have a text class or a font class? And so we're going to create a very generic one, but it's going to have a lot of customizability when it comes to the font, and then when it also comes to the GUI. There's going to be things that we haven't covered yet when it comes to scaling and tinting and things like that. And we're doing this only with the font and the GUI, because if I apply this to the object class, it kind of ruins a lot of the math. I've simplified a lot of the math that goes on when it comes to rotations and scalings and things like that, especially when it comes to bounding boxes. I've kept it very simple so that we can get through this in a halfway reasonable amount of time. So, okay, so that's what we got going for you. I pulled down a graphic. I need something like, oops, I don't need to kill this off, but there we go. I went to Dwarf Fortress, or I just looked up some kind of font, and I found this one, the 16 by 16 font. And what I did was I went into GameMaker and I massaged it and removed almost all of the purple that you see, because that's not actually see-through or anything. So I removed that and made it clear. I used the wizard tools and all that stuff to erase that, or to erase all the purple. And so I'm using this as my starting image for my sprite. If you don't like this image, you do need to find a way to get all the ASCII values from 0 to 255 into one sprite, 16 by 16, like basically 16 tiles across and 16 tiles down. And so getting the font going isn't a ridiculous amount of work, because we've already put in the ridiculous amount of work to get the sprite animated. So we're just taking over the animation effects and just doing it in a different way. So here's the code itself for the font.h and the font.cpp. So I have a constructor that passes in a resource. I took that resource I showed you, I called it basic font.png, so here it is with everything removed. I did not want to go do this. I'm not wasting my time on a character I'm never going to use. But everything else I went ahead and eliminated all that purple. And so that's basic font. So you can also see that here. I've changed this up a little bit so that now I have all the engine level sprites listed here, and that's the engine level sprites, probably the only one we're going to have. And then we have all the game level sprites that need to get all the textures that need added as well. And so nothing has changed here. We have, so I guess we can get rid of Samus. Box, goal, wall, hero, those are the only four we have right now, and I think that's all we have for the whole game. And then main menu, background, main menu button, but then this basic font requires basic font.png. So again, I can change this as long as my understanding is that I will replace it with a suitable sprite image that has a 16 tile by 16 tile rendition of the ASCII, of the first 120 or 256 ASCII character, 128 ASCII characters. Okay, so the font, so let's go back to this here. So what am I doing here? I'm setting up that resource. It doesn't matter where I put the object, because we're going to have a print function that does that for us. So I just set 0, 0, whatever resource comes in, basic font by default, and again 16 by 16. This is hard code baked in, because again the understanding is that the graphic is 16 by 16. So this passes everything up into the object, so everything gets automated. That sprite gets chopped up into 256 pieces. I guess it is 256. Never mind me. That is, it uses the extended ASCII set there, so it is 256 values. And so then once this is all set up, the only thing that has to go on under the hood here, and because everything else is handled automatically, is how to handle a print. And so you notice here I have 6 parameters. 3 of them are defaulted. So I have, where do you want the X value? Where do you want the Y value? That makes sense. Where do I want to draw something on the screen? What text do I want to draw? What coloring do I want to apply? That's tinting. The thing starts out as white, so whatever color I apply will be the color that gets drawn, because if you tint white any color, you tint it to that specific color. So that's kind of cool that we now can print out text in any color we want. And then we can apply the X scale and Y scale so that we can actually scale the font if we want to. And it's going to look, it's going to look blown up if we do so, but we have the ability to do so with that graphic that I've shown. And so how do I make this all happen? I take, and when I call a print, because every time I call print, I could be pointing to a different screen with a different text and a different tint and a different scale, or it could be, and all sorts of crazy stuff. So I just hard code and go, oh, let's set the position of the sprite. And notice this is why I have the catch-all get sprite function. So all the extra stuff that SFML does for us automatically, and we don't have helper functions for, I could just go in and just brute force it. So I could say set the position of the sprite. I guess I could have just said, well, I don't know. Just set it to XY, set the position of where I'm going to go, at least to start. Scale the thing, scale my image appropriately, horizontally and vertically. Tint it, accordingly. And then for every character in the text string, set the image index, because 0 is 0, character 1, ASCII 1, ASCII 2, ASCII 3. So everything is appropriately, we find the appropriate image. We call the draw event, so that's why this has to be in a draw event. We call draw, because if we put it anywhere else, it'll be cleared out when we get to the draw. That's why GameMaker does the same stuff. That's why all the draw events need to be, or draw actions need to be in draw events. And then once that's all said and done, I move over in space by position. I take whatever I'm at now and I move over X scale times sprite width. So I move over so I don't overdraw on the other, text over text over text as I go. And I just repeat and I repeat and I repeat. And that is the entire font class. So all things said and done, all I have to do is set up a font object, and I just call the print inside of a draw event, and it's good to go, which is pretty cool. So this is step one, and again, remember this basic font that I use as my default has to be defined, and any other font, of course, that you would use has to be added to the memory allocation here. And in my case, it's an engine level memory allocation, but if you were going to do it, you would be doing it at the game level because you're using a different font than the engine requires. Okay, so that covers the font class. So then now you will see here that I super loaded the button class up, and as I was promising here, I totally customized this button class, added a whole ton of stuff. So let's discuss what we see here. Let me just put more on here. So okay, so now when I set up a button object, I pass in the X and Y position, of course, and now I've named it sprite resource for which sprite am I going to use for the actual graphic for the button. So I just renamed the name here. I still have my callback function, and so now on top of this, because the button needs to draw text, now one of the parameters is which text should I draw. And so now, because the button has two states, I now have a color object that I can use for the off color. And so like for the off state, what color should I draw for that text? And for the on state, what color should I draw for that text? And then after all of this, these are all required parameters. The only default is which font resource should I use, and the default again is the basic font, and if I want to customize this, I have the full ability to do so. Okay, and so because of all of this stuff, and I'm creating a font down here, I have a pointer now to a font object sitting under the hood, and because of that, I need a destructor now, because I'm going to, if I initialize that to a pointer of something here, the font, which I have here, new, I have to delete it in the destructor. So I have a destructor that handles everything. And then I take over step and draw. That's a little different than what we had previously, because now I want to take what was drawn previously, which is the image with the correct animation frame, and on top of that I want to draw the correct sprite for the text in the correct color. So let's see, step and draw are overridden. The callback function is the same. Font has been added, text has been added, and then the on color and the off color have been added because I need to store those as they come in from the constructor. Okay, so again, the destructor, all it does is delete the font. It's the only thing that needs deletion. It's the only thing that has a pointer. And so now let's take a look at that constructor. After you add all of these parameters, I still have to make sure the SFML object, the base class, gets respected, and it does. Nothing has changed. I pass the X and the Y, I pass the sprite resource. The name has changed, but nothing else functionally has changed. 2 images horizontally, 1 image vertically. That's the rules. Callback function the same, and now here's all the new stuff. Font gets a new SFML font using whatever resource, and again, remember that resource comes in as a default, most likely. The text I want to draw comes in and gets saved. What is the off color? That gets saved. Whatever the on color is, that gets saved. All 5 of these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus the call to the base class, everything is set up, everything is set in a valid state when you hit the end of the constructor. Okay, so let's see. I don't think I changed anything to step event here. I get the mouse position, I set the image index to 0, I check the sprite bounds. If the mouse is in the bounds, set the image to 1. If you click, call the callback. So nope, I do not think the step event has been modified in any way. And now the draw event has. And so the button itself has to draw itself, because you have to remember, if I do that, it's basically the same as GameMaker saying call inherited event, and that tells the engine, draw whatever you would have drawn if I didn't come in here and try to change things up. And I want to do that first because I want to draw the text on top of everything. And so I draw the image for the button itself, and then I go ahead and I figure which draw color do I need, and this is just a ternary operator. If the image index is 0, set up the off color. If the image index is 1, set up the on color. And then I call the print function, and I kind of hard-coded this for the font I used, and I put some scaling in, and I put the draw color and the text. And let me just show you what this looks like, and then before we continue on here, because there's a lot more to go. So with the font, this is what things look like. This is scaled up 3 by 3, so the image is 3 times expanded horizontally and vertically. And notice the colors. It's yellow. The text is drawn yellow when it comes to the off image, and it's drawn gray, just like in the game that we made. The font is terrible, but the behavior is identical to what we had going for us. And again, I hard-coded this just so all the text could fit within the buttons. And in a real-world example, if we were doing this for a real generic button class, there's even more customizability I would be doing to make sure this thing works appropriately. But I think this is good enough for our first draft. So yeah, so that covers setting up the font and setting up the buttons, and then the majority of the rest of this, just real quick, will be just discussing, since I changed this stuff around, especially the button class, how does that affect all the rest of the code? How did that cascade through the rest of the code? This is where tinkering with quite a bit of stuff at one time comes back to haunt you when you go to describe, what did I change? Because I'm not 100% sure that this is the last file that I needed to modify to get everything working. So forgive me, please, if you're going through this, send me an email or send me a comment here, and I will put something somewhere to indicate what went wrong or what I did that you didn't do or you didn't know to do to get this thing working. Because as far as my understanding is, I created a font class, and the button uses the font class, and then I just have to set up, if I'm going to use the button classes, I just have to supply all those extra parameters to the buttons themselves. So again, X and Y position is fine. Which resource do I want to use for the graphic? What function, callback function, gets called when I click on it? What text do I want to print on top of the button? So quick game level 1, level 2, level 3. What is the off state color? Yellow for all cases. And what is the on state color? In this case, I just used a medium gray. Tinting again, 128, 121, 128, 128. So 255, 255, 255 would be pure white. 000 would be pure black. So this is basically halfway in between. And if you don't like it, of course, you can always tweak it. That's why we have these things here for you, so you can modify to any color, all 24 bits, of the color, that you can pick whatever you want to pick. And so coming back, nothing else modified, nothing else changes, because all we're doing here is text, and we'll fix up the custom text. We're not at that point yet. And so again, I click it, the level moves on. I should probably fix that up. And so level 1, level 2, level 3, level 2, click, 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 level 3, click, 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 game. And all the buttons do what they're expected to do because they all are behaving the same code. They're just all using variable colors, and they are using the same colors, but they could all be different colors, and they could all have different graphics. There's a lot of customizability if you're pushing this into the future. So again, I am sorry. I think I have everything listed that I've done, and if not, let me know. swardb@cod.edu is my email address. Comment here on YouTube. Next step, I don't know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning for me. I'm going to think about it when I wake up. You will already know what it is by the time you wait 5 seconds after this video ends. So anyway, have a good night, everybody. Take it easy. See you next time.